Congrats to our listener Ian for winning a free copy of Penny's Big Breakaway. For more indie game giveaways, keep it locked right here on Level With Us. Welcome to another episode of Backlog Brunch, where we get the chance to catch up on some of the games that maybe we didn't get to talk about on the podcast. I'm joined as ever by my co-host Marcus.
Hello.
And a lot has happened in the last few months. We've kind of gone over that before, but filling in the cracks between all the major life events is some good old-fashioned video games. So just the other day, I completed Super Mario RPG. As I've said many times on the show, I'm not the biggest RPG fan, but I make an exception for Super Mario RPG as it directly inspired Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door, which we're getting a remake of very soon. Very exciting. Super Mario RPG is a remake of the SNES classic, and I love that they kept the really squashy, stubby character models, or recreated them from that game. And it's pretty goofy and pretty short, but like it's very clear that this game kind of laid the groundwork for other Mario RPGs, and also Sea of Stars. Like there's a bunch of things that popped up. I'm like, oh, okay, I know Sea of Stars referenced this game. I didn't realize that it takes a lot of DNA from this game. So very good game. I quite enjoyed it. And then another JRPG that I jumped into was Persona 3 Reload, which is, one of those games that's 60 to 80 hours long, which is a bit too much for me. But I really admire the presentation of that game. I think the UI, as you'd expect, is amazing. And there's something about that loop of, leveling up your courage by eating a hamburger or reading books to upgrade your academics so you do well in school, and then going to the dungeon to go dungeon crawl in between that. That's a pretty satisfying loop. I hope that kind of thing sticks around. I know that you have also played an RPG recently and completed it.
That's right, yeah. My wife and I played through Cassette Beasts, and it is a monster collector. What do you call Pokemon likes? It's
creature collector?
A Pokemon type game, yeah. So the reason we decided to try it out is because my wife is a huge fan of Pokemon games, and I've sort of fallen off the wagon in recent years. I haven't kept up with Pokemon. So this kind of gave us the chance to both be in the same place. Like we both got to be surprised by the design of monsters when we ran into them. We both felt like we didn't know exactly what way the game was going to go. But we really enjoyed our time with it. So it's like a 2.5D art style. You're a pixel art figure, but in a 3D world. And I think that the main mechanic that kind of sells the game is any two monsters or cassette beasts can fuse together into a, like, I don't want to say procedurally generated. There's a word for it. It's like not actually designed so much as it is the components of the two monsters mashed together, which means that sometimes you get really cool combos and sometimes you get like absolute duds. And that's kind of the fun of it, is you'll combine like a shark and a T-Rex type thing, and together they just look super ugly. But it's cool. It's basically like that web browser thing where you can combine any two Pokemon and create a new Pokemon. It's like a game based on that concept. I think that there are also several other things that kind of sell the game and make it distinct from other like games. For example, any monster, any beast can have like 8 moves, and you can assign every single one of them if you're not in a battle. So there's a lot of strategy in what moves you want to put on them. Also, there's a lot of interesting type interactions. Like instead of just water type being good against fire type, if you use a water attack onto a fire type, then it gives them the status extinguished, which lowers one of their attack stats or certain one of their defense stats. And sometimes it's kind of hard to all keep track of, but in general, it was pretty cool.
We're so used to the, water beats fire, fire beats grass, that it's interesting to see an interaction of Oh, fire melts plastic type creatures. Interesting.
Right. So it's, I mean, just the novelty of the things that, haven't been in Pokemon is part of the fun of it. It is funny, though, that it always gives like a justification for why a type interaction happens. So it'll be like Earth against plastic, and it'll be like, just as the unfortunate last resting place of most plastic is within the Earth. So also, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I would absolutely recommend it, primarily just because it's a 2-player game. So it's couch co-op, and so if you've ever wanted to play through a Pokemon game with someone else, I think it's very good for that.
Which I've only played a few minutes of it, but I really like that idea of doing a couch co-op RPG. I mean, it's still turn-based, but it's cool to feel like you're progressing through the game together. And they just announced Sea of Stars is going to do the exact same thing, where you have up to 3 people all running around on the same screen and doing battles together, which makes me super excited to play through the game again with my wife. Are you going to ever finish Sea of Stars? Do you think you'll ever jump back into that, or not feeling it?
I would if you played alongside me.
Hey, there we go. Let's do it.
That'd be fun.
It'd be great to have a regular RPG night or something to sit down and slowly progress through that. That'd be really cool.
That'd be awesome. I don't know if we're giving a full picture in our Backlog Brunch, but I will also say about Cassette Beasts, there were a couple of details of it that got a little more grating over time. I think that that's true of a lot of RPG games. There are just certain things that kind of get boring or rote. Traversal across the open world environment doesn't feel that good. I think partially because there's some random load screens places since I played it on the Switch, and that was a real bummer. And then also, there are a couple of nitpicks I had about it, but I think that in general, if you're looking for a Pokemon type game that has some new, unique, fresh beast designs and the opportunity to do couch co-op, it's definitely worth a try.
Cool. Yeah, that game comes highly recommended from my friend who says he loves non-Pokemon games.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't play Pokemon at all, but he'll play Pal World and all the creature collectors and things like that. So thank you for spotlighting that one. Shifting to a more cozy type game, Coral Island. This game, we received a code when it was in early access, and we were going to bring on a guest who knows this game so much better than we do, but unfortunately things didn't work out. But they just released it fully now, so I'd love to shout it out. This is a farm sim, and yes, we're a bit oversaturated with farm sims these days, but trust me when I say this one's pretty good. It's definitely, obviously, takes a lot of cues from Stardew Valley, but it does so with really lovely looking 3D models. You get to go under the sea and clean up trash under the sea and meet mermaids, and you can even marry a mermaid, so that's kind of fun. But yeah, I think it's a quite a lovely spin. Definitely a safe spin, but a good one nonetheless for killing some time. The thing about, I mentioned Mario RPG was short, which I really liked. Persona 3 Reload was super long, which I didn't like. It kind of became a chore to play after a while, and that's not for me. But this is kind of in the middle there, where, there's like Animal Crossing, right? There's some goals you can work towards and then feel good about being done with the game, or you can play it infinitely if that's the type of player you are, right? Mm-hmm. So, so that one comes recommended, and it's on Game Pass as well, if anyone wants to try it out. And then another Game Pass game is Cocoon. A lot of people already know about this one because it was nominated for Best Indie Game last year at the Game Awards, but it's this very simple, very elegant puzzle game where the only controls are move and press A to interact. And you're basically in this very surreal, very abstract world. There's no dialogue at all. This is by one of the creators of Limbo and Inside, and you can tell. And it's very hard to explain. I would recommend looking up a trailer, but basically you can pick up an orb that has a miniature world inside. And if you set the orb down in certain spots, you can jump inside it into that world. but then you can also jump outside of it and bring other orbs into it. So then you just have this stack of worlds within worlds within worlds that you're carrying around. And you solve puzzles, and there's a few interactions where you do something on the outside of the orb that affects the world inside it, and vice versa. And I was averse to this game at first because every like prestigious puzzle game that comes out, like Superliminal and other games like that, those kind of just melt my brain, and then I get, or Baba Is You, I get really discouraged when I can't get very far in those games. So I didn't really want to jump into this one, but it turns out it's actually quite good, and quite easy to understand. I won't say like the puzzles are incredibly easy. I definitely got stumped on one or two of them. But the nice thing is it kind of locks off your options when you're in a new area. It prevents you from going back to old ones. So it'll keep all the puzzle pieces right there in front of you, and it won't make you have to solve a complex equation in your head before having to, solve the puzzle. So that was great, and I recommend it to you, specifically you, Marcus, and the listeners, but I think it's a game you would really jive with. I think you would appreciate it because you design puzzles as well. Not the same type of puzzles, but you are a puzzle designer for the video game you're working on, as well as other personal projects. I think you'd admire it. I think you would like it.
Yeah, I've had my eye on it for a while. I haven't had the chance to try it out. It reminds me of two specific games. One of them is that Foursquare photo game. What is it called? Gora Gola? We played it together, and I guess since then have not thought about it at all. It does a similar thing, though, where it locks off previous places, and that helps make it more manageable, that you can't get stuck too much in a rut by going back too far.
That was definitely one that I think I needed your help on in order to fully understand how it worked, but that was a good one. Gorogoa. That's so hard to say.
Gorogoa. That's probably the reason we haven't talked about it since it's difficult to say its name.
I just did not want to say that word ever again. Gorogoa.
Yeah. And then just your explanation of Cocoon reminds me of Patrick's Parabox, which I played a little bit with our other brother. Absolutely mind-melty because you can move around blocks that are basically, like you said, miniature other levels, and it gets very twisty very quick.
I think that is a great example of a puzzle game that I would probably be a little too much for me, but I can certainly admire its ambition, especially with sliding block puzzles are the definition of the video game thing, right? Like that is, we are all very familiar with it, especially from Zelda games and stuff like that. So to have a new spin on it that no one's tried before is pretty, that's an achievement for sure.
Pretty neat.
I know you've been playing another game a lot lately, and I've been playing this same game a lot lately, and I'm curious how you pronounce it, because I pronounce it Balatro. How do you pronounce it? Do you say Balatro or Balatro?
I think when we talked about it first, you called it Balatro, and I called it Balatro. And now you call it Balatro too, so...
I call it Balatro. Cool. I looked it up, though. Apparently, like, in Latin, it's supposed to be Balatro, but the creators are like, if you say it with confidence, you are correct in how you pronounce it. So, I've taken that to heart.
And what does the word mean, by the way?
It means jester or clown, which is thematically appropriate, as this is a deck builder that uses poker hands. Do you want to explain how it works?
Yes, so this is kind of like a score-chasing roguelike, where every level you're trying to hit a certain number of chip amounts. So it's really about making numbers go bigger and bigger. Each ante, you have several rounds to play hands that are poker hands. So just like poker rules, a straight flush is better than two pair, etc. But over the course of a run, you're making permanent modifications to your deck and to your jokers. The jokers, I think, are the real set piece of this roguelike, because you'll get jokers with simple multipliers, like, multiply your score by 4, but then you also get ones that are like, if your hand has fewer than 4 cards, you get a multiplier. Or if your hand has a pair, you get a multiplier. Or, like specific strategies and win conditions. And it's got the it's got the roguelike juice in it. You know, it's got the good stuff that.
Oh yeah.
Because the original reason that I was interested in this is because it's published by the same publisher that will be publishing the game that I'm working on. But then I looked around and realized that like a lot of other people were playing this, and it wasn't just me. And it looks like it's been a big hit for a lot of other people like me. I think I've already mentioned that deck builders are, I guess, my favorite game type, at least the one that I'm most likely to play for hours on hours.
Sure. I mean, Cobalt Core was amazing. Like, that is still one of my favorite games from last year. And I still occasionally pull it open just because of how strong of a loop it creates. But Balatro is something else in terms of its addicting qualities, and not just because it has themes of poker in it.
That is debatable.
It definitely has something really enticing about, oh, just one more run. I was a little concerned because I'm not familiar with poker hands, but the game is pretty quick to pick up. Like it makes sense. And what surprised me is there's no like story or anything. There's no story. It's just poker hands. There's not really anything else to it. And normally that would be a turnoff for me. Like I need thematics, right? And also like score chasing, like that's the loop of the game. It's not like health or something. Didn't matter. None of those things mattered at all. It is just that good. I think the creator of it did an amazing job just creating as many permutations as they could within the constraints of the game. And apparently it's still being updated, and it's going to come to mobile, and it's like sold 1 million copies now, so it's really picking up steam. Highly recommended, but not if you value your time.
It's difficult to describe exactly what it is. It's one of those things where you have to play it once to understand what it's asking you to do, you know? Mm-hmm. Like when I first heard it was a poker deck builder, I was like, well, what do you mean a deck builder? You have 52 cards in a deck. Like, do you add more cards to that? And the answer is yes, amongst other things.
Oh, yeah. And I love that helped me pick up the game. Like, I was like, oh, I don't know poker hands, but like, I know what a 52 card deck is. I instantly know what that is. Like, that is, you don't have to explain my starting deck. I know exactly what my starting deck is every game. I don't have to review it. Mm-hmm. And that helps, I think. The familiarity helps. That's another reason I love Dicey Dungeons so much. Like, I know the probability of a 6-sided die instantly. You don't have to explain percentages or anything to me. Right. I know what I'm doing. So I think this shares that. That's a big benefit of using real world, like board gaming mechanics in a video game.
I think you're right. I haven't really thought about that. I've thought about it in terms of like familiarity, and people like familiarity, but mm-hmm. more so than that, it's also knowing how to interact with something and knowing what to expect from it, you know?
Right. Like, I think it would take a while to explain to, I don't know, our mother how to do Slay the Spire, but I don't think it would take as much to explain Balatro, if that makes sense.
Sure. It does feel like a roguelike deck builder refined down to its like core components in a way. Each run you run into slightly different cards, and occasionally you'll see a card and be like, oh, if I had this other card to go along with that Joker, oh man, that would be such a cool build. And that kind of motivates you to play it again and again.
For sure. Yeah, great game. Glad we could bring it up on the show. And then just to wrap things up, I have 2 beat-em-ups I would like to mention. The first one is River City Girls 2. This is another game that we received a code for from Way Forward. Very grateful for that. It was released quite a while ago, but we did not get the chance to chat about it. Part of it was I wanted to play it with you in person, but ever since moving to a different city, it's been a bit harder to do local things with you. Mm-hmm. But basically, this game is a straight-up arcadey beat-em-up from a long line of beat-em-ups, dating all the way back to, I think, the NES or SNES. And this one is itself a sequel to a throwback of that series of games. And it's really hard, and I couldn't get very far. But I will say, I appreciate that first of all, the presentation is awesome. The pixel art doesn't have any outlines, which creates just a really lovely colorful palette to look at when you're playing. The fact that you can play the entire game in co-op, it has like unlockables, the music is all really fun, and it's done by a specific group. I think if you like a beat 'em up, you will like this game. I struggled with it mostly in that, early on, you only have like punch and kick, and for some reason, I could not beat the first boss. I guess that's a little embarrassing to admit. But I at least played enough of the game to understand that even if it's not maybe for me, this is, definitely everything you could want for someone who likes the genre. And, I mean, to be fair, I did like TMNT Shredder's Revenge, which we covered on the show in a previous episode. But I think that one was leaning more into the old school arcade pick up and play. They didn't want that game to be too hard, whereas this one, I think it actually requires some skill. Like, you need to know how to block, you need to know how to engage with all the systems. But yeah, like I said, if you like beat 'em ups, you can't go wrong with that. And then another one, which is kind of a beat 'em up, is Sifu, which I just played through over the weekend. And I showed this one to you because I thought you would be interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's based on old kung fu movies, and they're basically like, we want to make a game that has more of a combat system inspired by old Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee films. And so when it's at its peak, I think this game accomplishes that, where you're sliding across a table, picking up a bottle, throwing it at one person who's closing in on you, and then pummeling someone else into a wall and trying to crowd control, take people out one at a time. And that is like my favorite type of combat, is like when you use the environment.
Yeah.
I think that's something that games like Tears of the Kingdom and Spider-Man to an extent on the PS4 really nail, is like looking around and being like, okay, I can push this person off this. I can go, maneuver my body so I'm not in a vulnerable spot. And that all works great. I think it's beautifully presented. You feel like a kung fu master. And most of all, the premise is wildly inventive. Every time you die, you age a year. So you get older and older, and the goal is to beat this whole game, all 5 major sequences with lots of cool set pieces in between, before age 70. That is the goal of the game. And you want to be as young as possible because your health bar goes down as you get older. But you also get stronger as you get older. And then there's also some roguelike elements where each run you can pick up stuff. But I was less interested in that and more in just getting to see all the cool set pieces the game had to offer. So yeah, that might be worth a look. But there's a few things that were made it a little too hard for me to want to come back to it. In particular, the parry windows, like the timing on having to block things, is insanely difficult. You get literally a split second every single time you're supposed to block. So I think maybe they count on you dying lots in the game so that you can see what happens when you get older, but I don't know. I felt like it required an inhuman amounts of, okay, this person's punching right now, go.
Sounds like a skill problem.
Yeah, just get good. Maybe that is the issue, but besides that, I thought it was quite good.
Yeah, I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. I'm definitely really excited to try this game.
Really?
Yeah.
What excites you about it?
Just the visuals, the graphics, the set pieces, and I'm also just intrigued by a unique combat system. Just like you said, using the environment, I think especially makes for really satisfying moments in a fighting game.
You'll have to let me know what you think when you eventually try it out. But I think that will do it for this little Backlog Brunch. So thank you as ever for joining me. Next time, can we literally bring brunch to this? I'm quite famished.
I think that would make an excellent audio podcast, listening to us crunch some bacon, eat a little bit of pancakes.
Oh, good point.
Get a little bit of syrup on our microphone. Sounds good.
Oh, man. We will be back eventually to do some more little trivia challenges on the show. We are also planning on doing more indie giveaways, just like we did with Penny's Big Breakaway. So, if it interests you, make sure to keep an ear out. And until next time, I'm Jared.
I'm Marcus.
And we'll level with you then.